Hello, and welcome to the Grand Cinema Hotel, a podcast hosted by two friends who love cinema. I'm Gus, and I'm joined with my co-host Alvaro. Tonight, you'll be staying in Room 142, Pearl, the sequel prequel follow-up to X, directed by Ty West. So go ahead, get comfortable, and throw on that Do Not Disturb sign as we slash our way through the cornfields with Pearl.
Please, Lord, make me the biggest star the world has ever known, so that I'll make it far, far away from this place.
Now, caring for your family during these times is admirable, but you only get one take at this life.
If only they would just die.
Pardon?
Nothing.
What's going on, all my children of the corn? Thanks for checking back into the Grand Cinema Hotel. Today we're going to be talking about the prequel, sequel, XCUification of Pearl. But first, we have to address this. In our intro, we said we were two friends who love cinema, and that's because Nate is not here today. So we're sending love to Nate and Terralyn, as always. Nate will be back soon, obviously, but we had to power through today. And I'm here with Alvaro, and we're here to discuss Pearl. So, you had a question you wanted to ask me right before we started to record. So, do you want to start with the question?
Yeah, that'd be an interesting way to start. What's up, guys? Yeah, just also want to give just good luck to, or hope everything is good with Nate and Terralyn. But the question I wanted to ask you was, I'm seeing so. A lot of the times we go to the A24 movies, we obviously check out most of them.
Yeah.
And it feels like Pearl seems to have picked up like more hype than X did. Do you feel that way? That was really my question. Do you feel that people are receiving it in more of a, I guess we'll kind of discuss it more about it. And then maybe it's just a little intro question, but do you genuinely feel that way?
So I think just because it is the sequel prequel deal and we know how good X was, I think there was already going to be more built-in hype. X, at least for us, I feel like it kind of felt like it came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I guess because of the nature of how these sequels work, that people are probably more excited for them. I think that's probably true about every sequel, right? I'm sure people were more excited for the second Star Wars, the second Godfather, the second Indiana Jones or whatever. But I think because people already loved X, that they were ready to love Pearl, because it's getting really, really good reviews from like almost every critic I've seen, or website review, or fellow podcasters and YouTubers. It just feels like it's on arrival. It's just like, oh, okay, I like this, A+.
Because I guess, yeah, just to start off, X really came out of nowhere for us, and like we like slashers here. Obviously, sometimes we're not the biggest, not the biggest fans of some of them. A lot of the older ones are kind of a little like cookie cutter type mold, but X really came out of nowhere, and I felt like us three, at least at prior conversations, even with Nate, like we all agreed we like X more than we do like Pearl. And
yeah.
So, but it's interesting to me because I feel like for the slasher, the horror fan, like X was just perfect, and I agree to that testament. But I feel like Pearl is kind of going past that niche group, or not even niche group, but just a group. But like, and kind of going like what you're saying, like people who do watch Academy Award winning films are like, no, this is a good movie. And I think it's a good thing, obviously, but it's very interesting that certain movies break that like mainstream audience, I would say.
So I would assume you're talking about like Martin Scorsese and stuff like that.
Well, like
right?
that. I mean, I guess
that's a fun thing to bring up. I feel like we should talk about that.
Yeah, because I feel like because he said it was really like, because obviously we like to hear when Grandpa has anything to say, and like I guess they don't really put the mic on him that often, because it's not like I hear every week, oh, what did Martin Scorsese think about the 3 movies that came out?
Unfortunately, he's not on Letterboxd.
Exactly, but it's the fact that whatever interview he was doing, I haven't looked that deep into it, is that
I don't even know if it was an interview. Like, that's the thing, is like, did he just decide like, no, I need to let everybody know how I feel about Pearl, or was he actually being interviewed? Like,
yeah.
I know sometimes he pops up on like TikToks or like his daughter's Instagram page or something like that, but it's never for like his film takes, you know what I mean? It's
Exactly.
usually just like, hey, look at my funny dad on TikTok. You know what I
Because
mean?
in all honesty, like the 3 takes that I know from him is that he, like the hereditary take, right?
Yeah.
And then the whole everything he gets shielded for, like the MCU quotes, and
Yeah.
then this, and it's like obviously like we're making the podcast episode. We enjoyed this film, but it is weird that certain movies he felt the need to be like, I think I need the world needs to know that Ty West's second film Pearl here. I couldn't
Yeah.
sleep at night.
Yeah, I always said that was the most boomer thing ever, to be
Yeah.
like, these movies are so scary I can't even sleep. Like, dude, you made the joke, like, you know what I'm scared of? Poverty.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not scared of these farm girls with axes,
But I like that he sells it for me like that, and I'm like,
yeah,
all right,
definitely.
I
You know,
like
he's
it.
gonna. That's what he does. Like, I could listen to. He's just as good at talking about movies as he is making
Yeah.
movies. You know what I mean? Like,
Sign me up for that masterclass, right?
exactly. Or I wish he had a podcast, the
Exactly.
Scorsese cast.
Yep.
He could come on here if he wants. Anyways, so I wanted to kind of get into our general thoughts about Pearl. We saw this together, but you had also seen it the day before. So you've seen it twice or 3 times now?
Twice.
Okay, twice. I've only seen it the once when we went together. And I know I felt maybe less warm about it than you did, especially your first 2 times. But now that we've had a little bit of time to sit on it, I do think I like this film more than I originally did walking out of it. And that happened with Hereditary. I did not like Hereditary the very first time I saw it. And, you know, after the second watch, the third watch, I was like, what was I thinking? This is like the best thing I've ever seen. And so far, the way I could break it down is that I thought X was a perfect movie, especially for what it was trying to do, like being a slasher and then kind of making it about, like, making it relevant to modern times. With Pearl, I felt like it wasn't the type of movie, like it reminds me of many other movies, and those movies are not my favorite horror movies. So like, you know, it reminds me of Carrie, it reminds me of like American Psycho and Psycho a little bit, and or Misery, and it's like those are movies I really enjoy, but I don't think of like, oh, these are my top 5, top 10 horror movies. It would lean more towards like a really good slasher, which, like we said, we do criticize them quite a bit, but when they're good, it's like perfect filmmaking. And like, I really liked Barbarian, which like I don't know if we'll get to do an episode on that, but it's like, I saw something like Barbarian, I've seen stuff like X, I've seen stuff like Malignant, and then it's like, okay, this is kind of more of the lane
That you like, yeah.
yeah, it's like, not that they're better or anything, but it's like, that is extremely my shit.
That's the personal taste.
You know what I mean? And with Pearl, it did feel a little more like Psycho meets Gone with the Wind or something like that. You know what I mean?
Wizard of Oz.
But it was so beautiful. It was so well acted by Mia Goth. I mean, Ty West, I felt like he had pretty firm grasp on what he wanted to do. I did think that here and there was just some things I did not like about the movie at all. But yeah, man, now that we've had a couple days to think about it, I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I did.
Yeah. I mean, there's this movie I think is the perfect complementary type movie to X, but not really something you would have expected. Obviously, this movie still is a horror movie and still has slasher elements because the whole trilogy is going to be slasher based. So, but this one is slower, like a lot slower.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And people thought X was kind of slow too.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that's I know people kind of, it's like a joke, but like that A24 type of like filmmaking, right?
Yeah.
And this one felt more that way. A24. This is more like, oh, this is how, I don't know, some of our other directors that we've talked about, that kind of like building stuff up. Like when you do finally get the reveals, they're big.
It's so worth it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And like to me, X did that, but still in a slasher comedy way. And I think I really like the era that it was in. But then this for me kind of feels like when we kind of talk about that, kind of like a lot of people refer to it as the golden age of filmmaking, you know, and then like a lot of this stuff was made like this in Technicolor, like when it was coming out. And I do think that it's interesting that Ty West has definitely like kind of just really stylized these 2 movies. And it's
in 2 completely different ways.
And yeah, and I think that it was really interesting to make the tone also not be exactly the same. Because I mean, I would have thought that it would have kind of, I guess followed that formula. But this really answered the question of like, you know, when you get all those bad sequels to the origin of all the killers, like we got this origin story, but it made so much sense connective wise as to like this person is we're basically getting their breaking point.
Yeah.
Which is like, obviously we've kind of talked about this, like you could have just ran away, right? But but I think that it's the fact that she's obviously not okay. She's not a person with regular reasoning, and I think that the film presents that really well. And it kind of like what becomes really uncomfortable about the movie more than it is about the blood. But when like kind of like we're agreeing is like the moments that we do get our gory scenes are really worth it.
That was one of the first things I said when we walked out too. And I was like, I did think that the payoffs and the gore and the kills and all of that really did like not step up from X, but it's like, oh, that was fucking just as good. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of the build up and the change of tone. Like I was thinking about what you were saying right now, how it's like a perfect complementary piece and how it's also such a step in a different direction. And it made me think of like when Kendrick Lamar did Section 80 and then To Pimp a Butterfly.
Exactly.
Next. You know what I mean? Where it was like, whoa, like I didn't even know you could do that, but like that's crazy that you pivoted so much.
Yeah.
And it does feel like Pearl will be like the Oscar movie. You know what I mean? Like out of X. Like X is for people like you and me who have a podcast and like, no, bro, let me tell you why X is better.
This,
yeah, adjust glasses. Actually. But with Pearl, I do see it getting that acclaim because it's such a one of the things that's always gonna work is that like she goes to the movies a lot. Okay.
Yep.
First,
obviously.
She goes to the movies a ton in this, which is it. You know, it's kind of putting you in that mindset of like this is Ty West and Mia Goth as like one person.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because this character is such a collaboration between the two of them. But that is why the first reason why I thought it was going to be an Oscar movie. I was like, she's in the movies too much for this to not be.
That's how you know.
And then, yeah, like you said, it refers to the golden age of Hollywood so much. Like, it reminds me of The Wizard of Oz. It reminds me of Gone with the Wind.
Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, all those, like, crazy Technicolor, just wide shot, beautiful movies. Like, it really was, like, just absolutely gorgeous. And, like, that was another one of the pluses I had with it. And I do think that, like, we thought X was well done, like, from a cinematography sense. I thought Pearl was just, like, such a huge upgrade.
Yeah.
In such a small amount of time because we know that they made these back to back, one right after another, and it's the same crew and everything. So for Ty West to just all of a sudden like elevate himself within like 2 weeks of making the other movie, like, oh wait, I'm gonna do this instead. This is gonna fucking kill.
That's what I'm saying, because you're talking about like the ultimate pivot mood, and then it's crazy because people take years to make a sequel to stuff, and he kind of was like, I wonder even if he told A24, I'm sure, because they wouldn't have given him the money, but it'd be interesting to think that they gave him 10 and he was like, I can make 2 movies with 5, you know? So I think what happened is, so he made X, right? And him and Mia Goth came up with the story of Pearl, right? So the script for Pearl, the movie, was going to just either be her origin story or just... It was like one or the other, right? He was like, I told A24, like, this is her origin story that me and Goth are like working on. Like, okay, so this is who the character is going to be. This is everything she went through before X. And then after making X, they were already in New Zealand, right? Because that's where both of these movies are made. Mm-hmm. And it was like right before COVID. And then when Pearl happened, it like COVID had started. So it was like, well, we're already here where it's super safe. Because, like, I don't know if you remember that, like, New Zealand was, like, one of the only, like, safe spaces in the world where, like, nobody had it. I remember that.
So it's, like, the same crew is here. The same equipment is already here. The same actors here in the same set. So, like, all I need is $1 million and I can make this movie. And they were like, all right. Yeah, fuck yeah. Because even if it makes 5, 6, they've already made their money back and more. It's all profit. So I thought that was a really smart move by Ty West. Like, it's a huge dub for filmmaking. You know what I mean? So. To just be like, yo, let me just sneak in this other one based off the profit of X. Like, X basically paid for Pearl without ever coming out. You know what I mean? Yeah, definitely. It's a wild move to just kind of just drop your nuts like that and be like, yo, I want to make this. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to do a trilogy too.
Well, especially because I can't really think of another time that it's happened in my lifetime, at least.
The Matrix back to back being released like within the same year, but those movies were probably shot simultaneously too. Yeah. And actually it's becoming a little more common because now that the Avatar sequel train is rolling.
true.
Like that's another guy who made multiple movies at once.
I guess it is like that's why we do go watch A24 movies, in terms of they obviously have their investments in the right types of projects too, and that just takes some confidence for them to also be like, yeah, we'll invest in this. Like you said, even at worst you lose that million or whatever it may be, and it's just different sets. And I think that's what's most interesting, kind of going back to the pivot point, is that to just kind of level up on, I'm going to choose a different style for this, and then kind of also, I think, obviously the star of this film, Mia Goth, it's just
Supremacy.
yeah.
Mia Goth supremacy.
I mean, we're big, pretty big fans.
We stand.
Yeah, we've watched a lot of her movies, just like Suspiria. We've watched obviously these
High
two
Life.
movies
She's
now.
in High
Yeah,
Life.
she's in High Life, and she chooses very interesting projects, and I do think this is probably her highlight though so far, just because she worked so hard in the character with Ty West, and this movie is such a character study and a character driven film, and I think any other actress doing this would have not sold me on it, and for it to be a follow up to something that's pretty different in all honesty, but it just really shows to me like how her prowess just as an actress.
It's wild to think that in the span of 1 year so far, well, not even a whole year. How long has it been since X came out? That was like January,
it was like
March.
months.
But yeah, within these few months, she's given us 3 iconic characters: Maxine, Old Pearl, and Young Pearl.
Yeah.
And that alone, like, it's like what everybody on Twitter is saying, is like they should create an Oscar category for her for having 3 characters in 1 year, and for them to all be so different. I can't even think of anyone else who's ever done that. The only thing that really comes to mind is when people will play an older version and a younger version of a character.
Right.
And like, if you had to guess what the best one is, it's obviously got to be like Robert De Niro and Marlon Brando playing
exactly.
Don Corleone. You know what I mean? But then now for me, like, especially like we try to champion like independent cinema and like, bring it to the forefront. Like, yeah, someone like Mia Goth is putting up Pacino, Marlon Brando numbers as one person right now.
Definitely. I mean, I think we're also being witnesses to history. I think, excuse me, but like horror is growing like in front of our eyes in terms of themes, and it's very different now. But every once in a while, we get films that I think Pearl could have been from any of the 70s type of like B movies that would have been out, but it's just much more elevated now. And it might be just because they do get that extra funding and they do have access to better equipment.
They're
and
just
stuff.
seen in a different light. I mean, you got to think about how many movie executives now are horror fans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they grew up in that time of like, they saw The Thing, or you know what I mean? Just like
Exactly.
those kids that we've talked about, like who were the people back then who knew that shit was cool? Like, well, some of those people grew up to make movies, and now they're like, yeah, something like Pearl needs to exist.
Because like you compared it to like Carrie, and it's like it takes a lot from that, and it's like it's being inspired by those things, but then making it your own. And I think Ty West has done such a good job with these 2 films doing that.
Yeah.
And it's not like I still haven't seen his first film. I didn't really know much about him before X either.
I've only seen The House of the Devil, and I actually did not like that movie. I felt like that was completely amateur, that he didn't use his runtime properly, that it was all just like, I sound like a boomer saying this, but it was too much vibes and aesthetic. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
I
it
get it.
really felt like nothing was going on until it was way too late. But no, man, like you said, we didn't know much about Ty West, but he's made himself like a household name within the film community. I mean, I know your average coworker or person at the grocery store doesn't know who Ty West is, but in the movie world, like I feel like he's really putting that stamp down of like, I am one of the most interesting filmmakers working today.
Yeah.
You could put me up there with Ari Aster and Robert Eggers and Jordan Peele and things like that, and he's doing it on such a small budget. Like we've talked about Jordan Peele's vision, but Ty West is like almost as up there.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but think of Jordan Peele and Nope while watching Pearl, and I think it's just because of that, like knowing that the director just knows exactly what they're doing, and like you can feel their love like for the movie that they're making.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like some people might feel like ashamed of the movies they make, like, oh, this is something ugly coming out of me. But when I think of Ty West and I think of Jordan Peele, I think of 2 guys who just you can't help but tell that they they love movies,
yeah.
and like even their own too, which I think is like that's baller as fuck. That's fucking tight.
Yeah, I mean, Ty West is, there's plans. We have the Mount Rushmore. There's a lot of runner-ups for the next head. He'd be in those plans. He's definitely all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think we have space for one more. So it's Ari Aster, Robert Eggers, Jordan Peele,
Julia
Ducournau, and yeah, I mean, I think Ty West is probably the favorite right now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It could be somebody else, but I was trying to. It slowed me down right now because I was thinking, I was like, how many heads does Mount Rushmore have? Like, how many of these? How many of these fools are founding fathers or whatever the fuck they're supposed to be?
You wanted to get specific. Yeah, I don't know how many.
Think of the Hokage Mountain and the Leaf Village. Be
guys,
like,
we plan to have a hotel with 1,000 rooms, so obviously having a Mount Rushmore with more than 4 heads is fine too.
So it'll be a tower, and then the 4 corners will be like one head is Ty West, one head is Julia Ducournau. Yeah, they'll be like gargoyles perched on top of our hotel.
Exactly. But I mean, I do think it's interesting that he's really paved the way pretty quickly for us, and it's really good to have the podcast to be able to actually really talk about the influence he has, like weeks or days or whatever it may be after we watch these films. Because sometimes, I like to, like, I've watched it twice and I kind of don't want to watch it until before Maxine comes out again. It's just because I really want it to be fresh again and be like, oh, I did enjoy this, or being able to watch it at home in a great quality. That's also worth it. But yeah, this movie or this trilogy is going to be, I feel like, a personal favorite for a long time. And obviously saving closing thoughts for later, but where do you want to go from here? Do you want to talk a little bit about the cast?
I think there's not really much cast to get into. I mean, we could talk about him as we kind of break down the movie a little bit, but we have to start with Mia Goth, even though we already have we've already gone on about her, but we just got to talk about it. So
we could talk more about her.
Yeah,
always.
We could always talk more about Mia Goth. She's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
When this movie starts, right, I felt like going into it and like maybe within the first 30-45 minutes that the pacing was kind of weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was because of X, which you can't not talk about these movies together. This is one thing that Ty West and Mia Goth just like, this is like, I would say a pickle for this movie. You know what I mean? Like that they created is that you can't help but compare it because you know what you're going to get to eventually. Right. So for the movie to kind of not be about the slashing and hacking and all of that until much later, I just was really kind of off put in the beginning because I felt like that Mia Goth had did so much with Pearl with so little time in X that I was like, why do I need all of this? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I rarely say this, but it almost felt unnecessary in the beginning. And I just thought it was because, like, for me, the main problem was like, oh, I think this is because of the pacing. Like, it's taking too long for me. It's a little too slow. But the more I really just thought about Mia Goth's performance, like, especially just straight from the opening scene, because that opening scene is like, I would call it iconic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought that one was really fucking good. But after that, I thought it slowed down a little bit. But with the more time that I've had to think about it, I really do enjoy that pacing now. So it's like it's flipped for me, even though I haven't even seen it again, just because I'm like, this is such a interesting character that I want to spend more time in this world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. What did you think when you were like your first time, like when you saw it? How were you reacting to this?
So I think it was funny because we talked about it obviously a little bit after watching it ourselves, and we kind of made the joke of it like this Looney Tunes movie, right?
Yeah.
But I thought that's what it did really brilliantly was evoke that period, and it kind of Wizard of Oz. Kind of we're in an adventure with this girl who isn't quite sure who she is yet. You know, there is a complacency to try to be normal in the beginning, and she has a very strong upbringing, as we see, and she is married. So I do feel like there is some complacency there that she wants to be quote unquote normal. We get more quotes in the movie about that later, but I did feel that watching this movie, I kind of felt like her acting prowess, Mia Goth, her on screen the first time I was watching it, I really was impressed by it, honestly.
Yeah.
I felt like because of what you were saying in X, she did so little with the small runtime as her.
She did so much with so
So
little.
much, yeah, excuse me. That I really felt like the payoff again was I could just feel like it was gonna be worth it. Because I guess it's interesting. You said it like the prequel sequel, because I know this is the prequel, but I actually do enjoy having watched X first,
Right.
which I wouldn't work, But it's the fact that kind of like you said, where it's heading, and I guess I kind of really enjoyed that this film played with what I thought was gonna happen, and instead gave me this character study of, like you said, like I like American Psycho a lot. And so I really felt like, okay, this is Bateman realizing.
This is Girl Joker, dude.
Yeah. Like realizing that, like, oh, I'm different, and it was just really interesting because I guess part of me, it's funny that you bring up Joker, but if this movie was about a guy, I do think it would be more universally championed by like guys, and I think that.
Oh no, has this been happening with this movie?
No, but I just mean in terms of like it would be looked at as like American Psycho.
Yeah.
But then now it's kind of like I feel like this movie, because a lot of these movies don't get a lot of love. So I'm glad that it happened now, because I feel like when the movie came out there wasn't much hype. When I went to go see it, wasn't full like Barbarian.
Yeah. Barbarian was packed.
Yeah. And that's what I asked you. Remember, like kind of like I don't know where that comes from, that little hype, but I did really feel like after Martin Scorsese spoke about it, and I mean it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a negative thing. I do feel that that's when people started like championing it like more, because people who know, you know what I mean? Like
that's influencing. That's real life influencer
Yeah.
shit. It's like Martin Scorsese said he liked this movie, and now I'm sure tons of like film bros who might not have given this a chance are gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna watch Pearl now.
Yeah, and I think there's interestingly enough, it's like A24 championed Martin Scorsese saying that. It's not like they took it as in like, oh, this guy just no. Martin Scorsese said this about a movie we produced. Like it was a post. They spotlighted it, and I think.
Free clout from Grandpa.
So I did really feel though that this film is getting the love that it deserves. And after kind of going back to where we started with the question, was after the first viewing, I just felt it was like I said, the perfect kind of complimentary film to it. And I really like the character study a lot more. And I think the fact that we know it's going to be a trilogy, now I know the deep, quote unquote, the deep cuts of what makes Pearl, so we can compare them to the deep cuts that will probably be Maxine. And in terms of, there's a reason why they're played by the same person, and they'll probably be different, but it'll be very interesting to have gotten that full arc for a character that is truly like, would be quote unquote an iconic killer that later would look forward to or whatever. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah. Like it could be one of the weird people in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre universe or something like that,
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, but I do think that this movie is getting that character study that usually doesn't work, and so I just really enjoyed how this worked.
Yeah, I mean that might have been one of my problems too with it, was that I wasn't expecting it to be like literally the Pearl origin story. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't feel like that when you're first watching it. It does kind of feel like that first scene, you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like this is she's always been like this. Like we're starting the movie with her already being, the Pearl that we know and love from X. But then it pivots and it's like, oh, this was literally like the first kill. You know what I mean? And that from here, it's only going to get worse and worse. And I did think it still left me with questions I wanted to know after watching X as well. So like, she's married to Howard. I had always kind of wondered if Howard was the driving force or if Pearl was the driving force in X. And I mean, you get the answer to that, but then you still kind of are questioning like, well, so how did Howard get to this point?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I understand it's not called Howard,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. They felt like such a pair. And then I don't want to say like it felt like it was tearing down what was built in X, but I just wasn't expecting it. Like I wasn't expecting the
The whole
pivot, and
movie.
maybe I should have. You know what I
see
mean?
what
Of
you
like,
mean.
oh fuck, everything about Pearl she hates, not just these kids who are filming porn on her
Yeah.
fucking farm. You know what I mean?
It's too.
It's not just jealousy. It's something way deeper than that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's like we get the one story with her in X that just really lets her lose her stuff, you know. And I think it's really interesting to have. I don't really think you could have expected the pivot. I think that's why it works so well, and I think that's why it's gaining a different type of attention. Is because that the pivot really is it's a slow burner, and I think it's interesting because it's runtime. I want to double check again. Is what 102? That's not that long. I don't think that's that long, and I don't even know if that's longer or shorter than X. But it's the fact that this is a movie that probably has a similar runtime to X that shares what 7 people, 7 integral characters probably.
Yeah.
And then to just go back down to one really important character, with just everybody else being the factors that make her into the Pearl that we see. But like you said, in the opening shots, we kind of get that there's something wrong from the get-go. You know, there's a lot of resentment being held there, but we're basically seeing her have her breakdown. Yeah, like you said.
So I kind of want to break down the movie a little bit, so there'll be spoilers and stuff like that. But I kind of let's kind of set up Pearl's life, you know, like what's going on with her in this time in her life. So I would assume she's like in her 20s, or maybe she's younger just because of the time, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, oh, she's married and everything to Howard, but I assume she was like maybe in her mid 20s or something like that.
I would assume so, yeah.
So it's like what, 1918, I believe.
We get the years, yeah. I was like, we could actually, like, if
It's
we would've-
1918 because I remember they bring up the fucking Spanish flu a couple times, and that was like another thing. I was like, this is so cringe.
Yeah, yeah, I do remember that.
But so you know, it's Pearl, but Howard is off in the First World War, I'm guessing. And we already kind of get our first bit of resentment there, that like we are given a piece of information that Howard could have not gone to the war. Like, he had a way out, and he still chose, I guess, his patriotic duty over staying with his wife.
Sigma.
But yeah, yes, exactly. So she lives on her mother and father's farm, and these are two of our other characters that we get. I would say the more significant one is Tandy Wright. She plays her mother. They're German immigrants, I believe.
Yeah, because they allude to that a lot too, which is, I think that was interesting.
And she lives with her father. Her father is Matthew Sunderland. He doesn't even have a name. It's just father.
Father, yeah.
Right? So at least the mother gets a name, and I think that is like very obvious screenwriting, because like the father is not that important. He's more of like a set piece, or like I wouldn't say like a MacGuffin or anything like that, but like he's there for like this, like really just to be like a background character. You know what I mean? And it's because he is very ill. I don't even know if it's because of the. I don't think it's because. Oh, it's because of the flu.
Yeah, because they allude to it later in the movie, but it is because he has the flu. Yeah, the flu is going. He got it, and then that's what happened to him.
Yeah, and you mean with medicine back then, he was so fucked that this flu put him in a wheelchair. He can't talk. He can't do anything.
And basically, what we're saying is maybe it's the flu should have taken him out, because living this
Would
quality
have done this
of
guy
life,
a favor.
living this quality of life at this time seems like it was very.
The only
It's
thing he can
terrible.
really do is take morphine, which Pearl definitely steals a little bit of it here and
Yeah.
there. So you got to think about that too. This girl's a drug addict.
Takes a little swigs, yeah.
Well, she's at the pictures.
Yeah, I mean,
So she's living in total, I don't want to say discomfort, but everything about her life is going wrong at this point. She doesn't get along with her mother at all. Her mother doesn't really seem to understand her. She has that like resentment towards her father, even though it's like she loves him. I would say she loves him way more than the mom.
yeah.
But it's just that resentment of like, you're holding me back. Because I have to stay here and take care of you. Like, I can't live the life I want. It's you, it's Howard, it's my mother. And like, you could tell from the beginning, it's starting to bubble up, this like just resentment towards life in general, the place she lives. We see it towards animals. And that really sets us up for the rest of the story, is that we have this girl who's just completely unsatisfied with every single aspect of her life. So I mean, where can it go from here, right?
I will say it's interesting. She's very obsessed with dancing, right? And so that's what's always interesting, because the dancing, to look back now at it, be like, dang, that's what you were obsessed with. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
that's just like a funny tone to me. But like, it is very interesting that she's so caught up on being a star, and we get that sentiment very fast, because she performs to the animals a lot, and she's like, I'm gonna get out of this farm, you know. And it's very clear from a beginning that it's an obsession, and obsessions obviously
it's disillusioned.
Yeah,
Like there's no logical reason why Pearl would become a star. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds awful. Like it's some hater shit. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm hating on Pearl, but it's realistic. Like, it's like being like some like those videos you see of the kids who play on the like basketball on the dirt in the farm or whatever, and then like, yeah, he's gonna be in the NBA.
Yeah.
Like, this bro never even played in AAU. He's not going to the NBA.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like Pearl has never had the training. She has no like stage presence. You know what I mean? Like, she has nothing that would say like this person would be a star.
If right now,
but other than she just wants to be, you know?
If you had the visuals right now, your mask would be the mom's face right now. just grilling.
Yeah,
her.
I'm team mom. You know what, Pearl? You need to get your shit together, because this is not it. You are not going to be a
Like,
star,
you know
baby.
what? She's realistic. I agree. I get what you're saying, definitely.
So this all starts bubbling up from, I would say, the beginning. It's just that what bugged me was the like how long it took to get there. Right. It was cooking for a little too long. But what you were saying right now about how she's like obsessed with like being a star, and like we've talked about her going to the movies and things like that. I know that it has to do with Ty West, because he said with this trilogy of movies that he's trying to kind of, well, obviously make entertaining horror films, but also kind of dissect how movies affect people. So like, because Pearl's so obsessed with movies and dancing and becoming a star, it's almost like it drove her to becoming
Exactly.
Pearl, the murderer.
Yeah.
You know, like, she loved it so much. She wanted it so bad that it's not even like she was willing to kill people to get to it, but it was just like a passion that burns so bright that in this weird world, it leads to murder.
They were just factors holding her back, and like, those were just things she had to do.
Yeah, I know, right?
She
She kept alluding to like, if I could just get rid of all these people, like, I would obviously be a star.
Yeah.
Girl, just run away. You don't like this
Go
town?
then.
Just leave. It was that time.
Yeah.
Just change your name and go to a different town.
Yeah, and so yeah, that's just like the funny aspect that we were talking about after. Just, but it's true though, because I mean, where we currently live in times, people feel entitled to that, and we see that a lot.
Well, there's lots of pearls on YouTube right now, us included.
Yeah. So I definitely see how it's a movie, right? That's why we watch movies. That's why we like horror films, because it shows us premises to things taken to the extreme. And so this is somebody who is obsessed with being a star.
Yeah, it subverts the modern horror of like the real monster was trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like that, we've seen that joke going around, and it leads back into like the old horror, which is like, what if this businessman was a psychotic serial killer, and like, that's it. You know what I mean? And now, like, with Pearl, we have like the female Patrick Bateman. You know what I mean? Of like, what if this farm girl wanted to be a star so bad that she killed everybody she knew?
Yep.
And it's just like, it's just so different than what we're used to getting, especially from A24. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I had wondered if X was going to be like this heady, elevated, the real monster is trauma horror
Slasher,
movie.
yeah.
No, yeah, and it wasn't, you know? And I wonder if that's why they're deciding to go with this franchise, because, I mean, as far as I can remember, this was their first slasher movie, right, Pearl? I mean, as far as both.
Oh,
of
do
us,
you mean X or
yeah,
like
yeah,
the trilogy?
X, sorry.
Well,
X was their first real foray into this.
What about The Green Room?
That Green Room is not a slasher movie.
It's more of a what do you say? A thriller.
Yeah, I mean, it has horror effects, but it's not about. Well, I'm not gonna get into what makes a horror movie, but I just feel like that's not a slasher.
What about
A slasher is a monster or a man with a mask coming to hunt you down one by one.
What about that Chance the Rapper movie?
Slice?
Yeah, was that about is that a slasher?
No, I think
never
it's a
watched
werewolf movie.
Oh, okay. Anyways, but as far as I know, yes. As
Yeah.
far as I'm just trying
from
to
our standards, yes. Okay.
Exactly. In terms of being able to be compared to this, like slashers from the 80s and stuff like that, it is definitely, I think, the first one to be like that. And this one, that's why it kind of took its different, grabbed some of that element of the more.
It's mainstream movie making to make like a slasher movie.
Yeah.
And so it was, I feel like with X and Everything Everywhere All at Once, like A24 has kind of made a leap into like, we might be interested in making blockbuster films here and there.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's why they decided that this was the time to do a franchise, because it's slasher, but you could still get away with doing all these like elevated art cinema things, and to use a slasher as like the as like the vessel, you know what I mean, to do it. I just felt like it kind of makes so much sense now when you think about it, because we have seen some people be like, why did they do X? Why didn't they make a sequel to or a prequel to The Lighthouse or something like that? Right. Yeah.
Right?
And it's like, that's just not. That just doesn't. First of all, that doesn't sound good, and that's why you don't make movies.
Yeah.
Be like,
Agreed.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really know where I'm trying to go with this, but I do think it's like, well, for one, it's very cool that A24 has decided to do this, because I like all of like the marketing that's come with it. I like the merch that's come with it. You know what I mean? Like, come on, the online ceramic stuff is hard as fuck.
Always.
But yeah, damn, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here on this movie. But
I did want to just add to kind of
getting lost in the sauce a little bit.
An idea or that you sparked while you were talking is that another aspect that I like of this movie is the themes that we get in X is a lot about like age, right? And kind of having this resentment.
They were ageist.
But then you look back now with the Pearl film, and it kind of makes so much more sense that she would have resentment to age, because age is definitely the thing. You can't kill age.
Yeah.
And so age is stopping her now from being a star, and you can't do anything about time.
Pearl probably definitely thought she was still going to be a star at like 45, 50.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we're finally getting her like knowing like Howard can't even have sex anymore, you know. And I think that it's because we have now Pearl to kind of see where the character begins. You kind of could imagine all of these things just making her crazier, and just more the version that we see in X.
You know, I had this question, and I didn't mean it to be like joking or offensive or anything like that, but I do wonder if Pearl is, I don't want to say like neurodivergent or on the spectrum or something like that. You know what I mean? Because she says a couple different things throughout the movie that kind of, well, movies are usually heavy-handed with these things, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, for her to say things like, I don't understand how other people are, or I don't know if people feel the same as me, or just seeing some of the things she does, like the stuff with the scarecrow, you know what I mean? Where it's just kind of like, is she even really, like, I don't want to say all there, but like, are all her mental faculties like firing on 100? You know what I mean? Or is there something a little, it's going to sound bad, but like off about Pearl?
But I think the offness might be what you said, kind of, since Ty West brought it up as a theme, might be from seeing the pictures. The offness might come off from having these unreal expectations based off what you think reality should be.
Like somebody who's just so lost, like she's completely disillusioned, honestly. Like, she's not living in reality.
Like, those farm animals are really her. She thinks that she performs for them.
Yeah, exactly. And like, she's talking to these animals, like, and I know it could seem like just like, oh golly gee shucks, Pearl is cute, she talks to the animals, but usually filmmakers are not subtle about these things. So like, for it to kind of stand out to me, it did make me just wonder, because that's I don't even know if that's something that's been like ever been done in horror before. Like, I've seen a couple of movies here and there. Like, one of the last ones I could think of was where it wasn't meant to be like the complete focal point of the movie, but it was just there, was like when Ben Affleck was in The Accountant. Like, he played someone who I think had autism or was on the spectrum, and like they would show like little flashbacks of like why he was so particular, why how it like he used that as his benefit to become like this accountant slash assassin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know I don't think I've seen anything, and I've tried to see if Ty West has said anything about like if Pearl is a character like this, but it's just something that kind of stood out to me. And like I really don't mean it in like a joking or offensive way, but I could not help but feel like is this what he's trying to do?
Because I will say that I like that you brought up that point, because it kind of brings me back to a scene where she brings one of the only other male characters we have in this film back to her place, and she's kind of talking about the farm animals that she performs for them, and we know this is actually after some interest has been shown from his part, at least, towards her at this point. But
at this point they fucked.
Yeah, exactly. And even he is off-putted by actually getting to know her. Be like, he's literally the embodiment. Like, damn, bitch, you live like this.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I think there's that uncomfortableness, and the whole movie before those big explosions of horror are that tension, that uneasiness, tension that I think I couldn't help but compare to Hereditary in terms of, you know, something is not like some. I think it's a little different because we had X, you know, so we know where it's heading, but it's the fact that they use that tension a lot more than even in X.
You know, I had not even thought about that, but since you brought up Hereditary, is like that was another character like Charlie, where it was she was obviously on the spectrum somehow, but it was never actually brought up.
Good point.
You know what I mean? So that's like, it's been kind of dabbled with here and there, or like even in like films like Saint Maud, where she has these like religious experiences in her mind, but then there's been talk out there of like, is she suffering from seizures, and that's what she sees while these things are going on. Right. And like that's a line that's like stays blurred the entire time. So it's something that is dabbled with in horror, but it's never just like, it's not like when they make like drama bait movies about like, oh, this character who's different. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, this is a story about how they're different. I didn't feel that way. Like, it didn't feel pandering.
Or even when they made the movie, was it the football player and Sandra Bullock?
The Blind Side?
So it's kind of like with that, when they make a movie about that difference of like, this is a person who's going to help them. You know what I mean? And I've never seen
this
it.
white savior movie, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen it, but it's kind of about differences, right? This person is, that's kind of what you're saying.
He's so different from
it's
her.
So obvious.
Yeah, exactly.
And it becomes so like, she's a good person because she's helping.
Yeah. And with Pearl, it's in like, Pearl hates this about herself. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't a feel good story either of like, oh, I'm different and that's okay. Like, this is the driving force in Pearl's life, is this, I don't even know what to call it, like, because I don't want to be like offensive or anything, but it's like a sickness to her, like her existence, you know what I mean? And we get this big huge monologue later in the film about her life and how she's just so completely unhappy with how her life has turned out, how she thought her future would go, just her entire existence. And like, you can't help but feel so bad for her. But we had joked after the movie, it's like, that doesn't mean it's okay to kill people.
Yeah. I feel that way too, Pearl.
Yeah, like I feel a lot of the ways that Pearl feels, like, but I don't fucking kill anybody.
That was a point in the first viewing that I knew, like, this is gonna get noticed. Like a 7-minute monologue of her basically going into different moods, and real, like, just an amazing showing for Mia Goth in terms of emotion, and kind of giving us that character insight just by monologuing to the camera. And even the character's reaction that she's speaking to later, it's kind of, you can't really say anything to top 7 minutes of straight monologue.
She's like, I gotta go, bye.
Yeah. And I think that also shows to the insanity that like a American Psycho, someone like Patrick Bateman would have. It's that knowing that all of those like facts about the what is it, the boys, like the music that he's playing, I always forget what it's called.
Huey and the News.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah.
But it's like Pearl, obviously, even in that, is very smart and very.
She's
well
like that
versed.
about Palace Follies.
Yeah. You know, and it's just really interesting because in terms of that obsession, she really feels like it's going to start with that little church tryout, you know, and it really, like, it derails her dreams because it wasn't supposed
and it's
to
something
go that
so
way.
small.
Yeah.
Like, if Pearl was any more well-adjusted, she would realize, like, okay, I'll just go to more auditions. You know what I mean? Like, she really did think that, like, this was going to be it for me. I'm going to try out for this small church 7-city tour. Did she think they were going to be recording this? Like, there was going to be agents? Is it going to be like Elvis? Like, there's my star.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what Pearl thought was going to happen?
You know what she should have done? Is just moved to another city and just said she was like the teacher, and then she could have gotten better.
Exactly. This could have all been solved by just moving and changing your identity. Oh yeah, you know what? I actually used to teach drama at the school, and where do they say they're from? I don't even remember. It's middle of nowhere, USA. I think it's supposed to. Oh wait, no, it's Texas.
Oh yeah.
So yes, it is middle of nowhere, USA.
Yeah. You know.
Shout out to Texas viewers.
Shout out Crocs.
Yeah. Shout out
alligators. Right?
Theta. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
assuming it's alligators. I still don't know. I'm 28 years old and I don't know the difference between an alligator or a crocodile.
Crocodile, yeah.
One's skinnier than the other one, I think. Anyways. But yeah, with Pearl, it's like if she had been any more well-adjusted, she could have just realized, like, you know, being an actor doesn't mean I'm just going to walk right onto a set and I'm going to become famous. Like, I know it's probably because she had a horrible support system or no support system at all from her parents, but I don't know. It's still something that kind of bugs me to this day, but then I understand, like, okay, it's a fucking movie.
Yeah.
You can't just step in and be like, girl, this isn't the end of the world. Go ahead. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I can't talk about this point too much without starting to remember why I dislike some of this movie.
I blame the pictures. She's a cinephile incel.
Yeah, she's a femcel.
And that's why she has unreal expectations for life. Just as a lot of cinephiles are, you know, made fun of in a jokingly way, obviously. But I do really think that's kind of what she spends so much time watching these films, and it seems like she alludes to when she's talking to her dad that you would have liked this one. So maybe before, when her dad was fine, they used to watch movies together. Maybe that's where some of the love that she has towards him comes, and why she might feel guilty about leaving him specifically.
Yeah,
because she seems to have good memories with him.
I also wanted to go back to the mother character, because we kind of skipped over her a little bit, but she is the main, like, antagonist in Pearl's life. But, you know, I'm a parent now too, so I kind of understand the mother's side, but you don't have to be such a bitch about it. You know what I mean?
You know what I found really interesting was after I watched it with you, you walked out and you were like, the lady was trying to have her hereditary Toni Collette moment.
She literally did the "I am your mother."
And the first time I watched it, and maybe it's just because we're guilty to the moment, and Toni Collette, shout out, got robbed. But it's so iconic. And then I thought the same thing, you know, and I guess this is one of the small spoilers I did want to talk to you about. And like when she goes up in flames, and just kind of like that imagery is very similar to Hereditary, seeing the dad on fire. And,
yeah, Ty West might have been watching Hereditary when he wrote that scene.
Yeah.
It did feel like that now that you bring it up. Like, I did kind of think of it a little bit, but then I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I was going to bring it up because I didn't want to be like, oh, to constantly tie this back to Hereditary.
No.
But yeah, that scene does have a lot of Hereditary flavor in it.
And I mean, that's something like,
or that relationship as well.
Yeah, and it's maybe it's my bias towards that being one of our favorite movies, you know. But I do think I'm a sucker for good formulas, and that's why it's a good formula.
Yeah, like, you're not ripping off something bad.
Yeah, and it's not the same situation, obviously, but I do think the imagery is very close and spot on.
Yeah,
and I did want to bring her up because the speech she does give out is strong. It's a strong performance, and I do thoroughly dislike
the other
this
big
lady.
monologue.
Yeah. And I think it's a realistic same thing. Like, you're ungrateful. You don't think I have dreams. I was supposed to be a wife to this man. Now I'm not, you know. And I do think it kind of puts into perspective, like you said, a parent's perspective to this thing. Like, you're just being ungrateful to what you have.
Like, yeah, you're an ungrateful little brat. Like, you live on this gigantic farm. You have food. You have a house. I don't know if she has parents who love her, but
yeah,
like, you have a husband who's gonna come back, and you're probably, I'm sure in the mother's point of view, it's like, you'll probably leave this place or take this place over, and like, look at this good life we've given you. I've had to escape Germany.
Yeah,
my husband is no longer my husband in her eyes. You know what I mean? Like, the poor guy. They both have resentment for this dude because he's in a wheelchair.
Yeah, and
now.
he's just listening like he's not there. That's what I'm saying. It might have been a favor for the
so
food
it's
to take
almost
him
like
out.
It's like not to go back to it, but I mean, in the literal way, it's like a hereditary trait between the mother and the daughter. Like, you can see the mother having these same qualities that who knows how they'll tie it in later, but it's like that Maxine has as well. So
Yeah.
it's like this repeating trend of like with these women of like just this complete resentment towards everything in life. And I don't know, man, maybe Ty West feels the woman's plight, and like that's what he's trying to say with these movies. But yeah, these are some like hateful people, like not just women, these are hateful people.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say it doesn't really allude to that they feel necessarily guilty for being Germans, and at the time, a lot of people had to. I mean, this is the first one that they were kind of trying to puff their chest, and the like, you know, the World War One.
Yeah, the mom was proud of her German
And
heritage.
as anybody should be, but I do think that plays a big role into having discontent to her life. Like, yeah, she didn't live her dreams. She's like, Germany is supposed to be on top of the world.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure she would have been happy staying in Germany. Why does she want to be on this farm in Texas, right?
Exactly, and I think that kind of like what you said in terms of having this suppressed resentment, because that's why she's a lady of a different era in terms of being able to repress that type of like trauma and think it's like you're weird for having effects for having trauma.
You know, as a character, Pearl feels relevant to like any time frame, like the young Pearl that we see in this movie, obviously. So Mia Goth, but the mom, you're right. She does feel like she's of another time completely. Like
not supposed to talk about
these
your
like
issues.
19th century fucking crushed velvet dresses, and like she's like from a before world, you know, and Pearl lives in like the now, you know what I mean? With like, she's into the movies, she has these big dreams or whatever. And it's like the mother is from that struggle time of like, you're just lucky to be alive. You know what I mean?
They always hate on you for having an American dream when they bring you to America, right?
Exactly. Why are my kids so American? Maybe because you brought them to America.
But
It's a powerful beast that will overtake every single person.
So I think that obviously you have that resentment, but you have a daughter that, for whatever reasons, has an obsession that isn't healthy in any way. So her extent of wanting that dream is, for the sake of the movie, murderous or what it may be. Anything goes for her. And her emotions are strong. And so she has that's where a lot of the tension comes in. I did want to go back a little bit to, I thought the opening title card for Pearl was cool with the croc.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, X didn't have an iconic like title card. It had the iconic like end card. Like when the movie ended, like it flashed X. Oh man, good times.
And it has the line too. So I did want to bring up an interesting little anecdote that I thought about. So a lot of people obviously like this, and it's interestingly enough that you brought it up. But would you be interested in a future where there's a middle movie where we discuss that time with Howard?
Yes and no. So I'm kind of glad you brought this up because we can get off the movie for a little bit and talk about just the state of cinema, if you will.
Yeah.
This is simultaneously everything wrong and everything right about movies.
Right.
So like, we don't need this at all because Ty West and Mia Goth did such a good job in X. I know everything I need to know about Pearl, and I mean, I'm glad I know this extra stuff because, yeah, like you said, we're consumers. You know what I mean? Like, give me more. I want Andor. I want She-Hulk. I want more of this.
We're lore builders.
More. So it is always sick to get more. Like there is like, I made the joke after watching Pig. Like, damn, I need the prequel show called Robin about his life as a chef and fighting in these underground fucking caves or whatever. Like, what's that about, right? But it's usually good for you that you don't get that. But in this case, what's wrong and right about it? It's like, it's wrong to even make this like franchise now, but it's, when it's done right, it's like, this is why you do this. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't sacrifice the art for the sake of money. Like, we're just gonna cash in on the fact that people liked X and made another one.
Right.
Like, they did it with good intentions and with a point.
I think the formula speaks of that intention because of what you said. If it was just we have 5 Screams, we're getting our 3rd Halloween, and if obviously
our third trilogy of Halloween.
Yeah. But all of them follow the same formula, and that's why they're boring. Like, I know what I'm gonna get out of this 3rd Halloween, and I know what I'm gonna get out of a lot of sequels that come out to things. Like, last year, that's 2 years ago now, like the Fear Street stuff. Like, they all, yes, they're different eras, but they all had the different like the same tone.
And they were literally tied together. Like they were more episodic than they were like movies.
Exactly. But then I did feel that this movie taking its stylistic choices, or I would say script choices, in terms of being a character study and not following the formula of the first one, and handing in all of those characters for instead one character study, and giving us just this very, I would say, specific way of growing up. Like that it seems very frustrating to anybody in general, but then now you have somebody who's also obsessed with a world that she's probably never even been part of. So it's like, it's a dream, it's a fantasy, and the film stylistically reflects that. And I think that just wanting to shoot that in the being 1917, like I said,
1918, yeah.
and having those stylistic choices of Technicolor, like the world looks very pretty, but her mind is not. And I think that character performance and the stylistic choices are just like perfect.
Yeah, so it's like, obviously they didn't just do this for the cash.
Mm-hmm.
Like they really did have, like this feels like even more of a passion project than X did.
Exactly.
But it's also everything wrong about movies. Like the over-explaining of the character, the just totally, like, like we knock on Marvel and Star Wars and everyone else for doing this, but why is it okay when A24 does it? Because they do it the right way, but anybody could do it the right way.
Anybody could.
Like Disney could be making the best sequels, like they choose not to. They choose to just cash in and fucking, oh yeah, now we're making the Mufasa origin story movie, even though you've seen 2 Mufasas already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That is actually happening. I'm not making that up.
Wow.
Barry Jenkins is directing it, dude.
Oh, wow.
You know, that's his Greta Gerwig's Barbie.
Gotta get the bag.
Hey, one for me,
One for them.
one for them. Oh man, and sometimes it's really for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think the dynamic of TV shows where we're at right now, a lot of people would say the golden era of TV. A lot of people, they're getting a good amount of blank checks to do stuff that people have been asking for. It's like, you said you wanted to open up a little bit. Like I seen David Cronenberg is getting a Dead Ringers TV show, a movie that's like 20 years,
Why? He'd be like, yeah, it's cool, but why? Why not an original story? Why not David Cronenberg make an original new TV show? Like, hey, guess what? You have 10 to 20 hours now to make whatever you
I know
want.
he's going to be like the executive producer of it and stuff, but it's the fact that he's executive producing it because it's his idea, right?
Yeah.
Dead Ringers is his idea. But I think it's interesting, like, good for him. Go get your bag. I mean, my man's old. I don't know much longer that money's going to last, but that's besides the point. But the fact that, like, you have to go and get, like, you know what? David Cronenberg had one of the last good ideas in Dead Ringers, and it's a 20-year-old movie, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I think it's interesting that kind of like talking about like where you can make an influence change is that A24 really wants to put themselves out there as being able to make different types of films. And we've kind of grown up in the time of seeing them be kind of like the little independent champion to now being kind of moving into more like
They're pretty mainstream now.
independent.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that it reflects that a lot. People like they get their merch, right? They have the membership stuff, and like that reflects.
I do think the only reason they would still be considered an independent studio or distribution is because the movies are still hella cheap for the most part, and the way they distribute them, they still make them like borderline impossible to see for some people.
Yeah, and that's
like not for us because we live in California and that we get fucking lucky that this is the capital of movies.
Yeah.
But it's really not fair for a ton of other people who A24, it's like you think at this point they would like have the money to distribute these wide, but I don't even know if that's what they're interested in doing.
I think honestly
It doesn't seem like a money issue.
Maybe because we are quote unquote progressives over here in California. There seems to be a higher audience here for that type of stuff, but I mean, maybe in the Midwest.
Hey man, elevated art.
Yeah, but in the Midwest, who would have any interest in maybe X or
a bunch of
everywhere
people.
else? I just think maybe they're too scared to take that chance.
I really like the film critic Dan Murrow. I've been watching him for a long time, and he's from Arkansas, and he lived here in not here, but he lived in Los Angeles for many years.
Yeah.
Right. So he gets to go to the critic screenings and all those types of things. And now that he lives in Arkansas again, he talks about how they don't give a fuck about like people in Arkansas or
just don't
people in
care.
Missouri or whatever. Like there's film critics here who can't even see the movie sometimes until like a week after it comes out, or it has to like come to their town. You know what I mean? So I don't know why. Like I feel like most people would be interested in A24 movies like on a mainstream level. Like I think most people would agree like, "Oh, those are really interesting," or they always do something that I wasn't expecting.
Exactly.
But I don't know. I feel like they got to just grow up, put on their big boy pants and be like, "We're a mainstream." Excuse me. That they're a mainstream studio now.
No, yeah, I can. Maybe it's like I'm saying, being a centrist that we're in California, it seems like it's very mainstream. I wouldn't know, obviously, in terms of how it does in the nation, but it seems people are very aware of their type of choices and films that they choose.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like they're having any directive or creative direction in these films. They're just distributing them, but they've made a name.
Well, some
for
they
a
do. I
certain-
think they do with X and Pearl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they do both.
Oh yeah,
But-
like they have like some of their stuff. Is
Yeah, like they
in-house.
have produced X
Yeah.
and Pearl, but not
Good
always.
point.
Sometimes they just distribute movies.
Distribute.
Like someone else makes them. Yeah, I don't know. I do think though that the days of A24 being an indie studio are all like that's in the past now.
What I do find
I
interesting.
mean, dude, they make Euphoria.
yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? They partner with HBO. They partner with Showtime. They partner with, I don't even know if they've done Netflix yet, but they've done Hulu because Raimi, that show Raimi on YouTube, is an
Yeah.
A24 show. So I'm like, bro, I know you have the bag to distribute these movies. Like you were selling $60 books and $50 candles. Like I'm pretty sure you could roll out Pearl nationwide.
Interestingly enough, I was thinking the other day that like Neon has an Oscar, and I didn't really think about that.
Yeah, Parasite.
Yeah, and I think
And they'll probably have one again this year with either Moon Age Daydream or Fire of Love.
yeah, a documentary one. That's a good point, but I think maybe A24 is a little trying to chase that because I don't think they've really had.
Well, they had Moonlight. That's the you got to
that's
think about
true.
it. That's what was one of the biggest Oscar scandals in a very long
That's
time.
true.
Was
That's
that
true.
oh, it's La La Land. Oh shit, it's actually Moonlight. So
That's true.
they've been there, done that, and I do think that they are very savvy with the whole like we're gonna spend cheap and take in the profit. But
Right.
at some point, you're gonna have to start supporting these directors and rolling these out like nationwide because I know, like you're saying, maybe in some places they are less interested in these movies, but it's like, brother, hop on Reddit, hop on the internet. Like, people want to see these movies. Like, I see all kinds of comments of people being like, I wanted to see Crimes of the Future, but it's not even coming out here for 2 more weeks. And if it might not even, like, I literally talked to a dude on Reddit. He was like, by the time it gets here, it'll probably just be VOD and then I'll just rent it.
Dang.
And like that sucks, dude. Like especially like if you just listen to this podcast, if you just want to be in the know with films and you live in one of these places, like bro, you're a Pearl. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
exactly.
Like that's fucked. I feel bad.
I think it's interestingly enough, like for example, Red Rocket was one of those, right? Could you watch Red Rocket and where it was shot in? You know,
Yeah,
like in that
right, in
town,
Sugarland, Texas?
in that theater, was they showing?
Do they
Red
have an
Rocket?
AMC or is it just one independently owned chain that's showing whatever is going to bring in the most money?
Because
you
all
know?
of these directors that they do pick up are from everywhere in the United States, you know, and like
Dude,
these stories
even
are
here
not
in
from
California, sometimes we still don't get A24 movies the day that they come out.
No, yeah,
Like this is wild stuff, dude.
it is interesting enough because I really want to watch Tar, for example, and
And
that's
who knows?
that's the same thing. I'm looking at it and it seems like it's not going to be showing here for a while.
We might have to acquire a screener.
Yeah, you know how it goes. But yeah,
Our matey.
I do see your point in terms of Pearl's everything good and bad about the current state of, I guess, creative processing or whatever you'd want to say it in terms of, but this is a successful use of it.
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, that's still on the pro side for me. You know, like I don't
Yeah.
think of it as a giant con. Like, oh, this shouldn't even fucking exist. But I do think, to be fair, that this is also what's wrong with most of the other mainstream movie studios. You know what I mean? But like I had joked with Nate because it's funny. I think Nate liked the movie the least out of us.
Yeah.
But then he also is he is the least kind to like superhero Marvel anything like that out of the three of us. Like me and you, you know, we make fun of it all the time on this show, and you know, it's fun to make fun of it, but
Of course.
we consume, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
of
we
course.
take part in that stuff. Like I'm part of the discourse on Star Wars and Marvel and all of those things. I just don't feel the need to talk about them because, you know, you got people like John Campea doing stuff like
It's been
that.
beat, yeah.
I'm not interested in leaking She-Hulk or No Way Home or anything like that. I'd rather talk about Pearl.
Plus, I've learned I don't try to shill Disney as much as I can. I think they have enough.
Yeah,
shilling
that's fine.
as
They
their
could
own,
literally
you know
pay
what I
me if they want me to do that.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
like some people do it for free just because they want to see Andor, and I'm like, if you actually want to pay me, I will do that.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you what I think about it, you know, but I do think obviously we're talking about one of the biggest companies in the world. They own so much that I kind of always
They
do
probably
feel
own
like
this podcast somehow.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
They probably like, but I always do feel like that's why I don't mind shitting on the stuff that they do when they don't want to put effort into stuff.
Yeah, so I didn't want to just lump Nate in with all of this. Be like, yeah, this is how Nate feels
No,
about
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
But what I was trying to say is, I had told Nate because he was like, yeah, I'm really excited and like that's cool that they're doing Maxine. And then I told him, I was like, that's funny. I was like, you don't like the MCU, but you like the XCU, right?
Yeah.
And I just think it's because it's like, yeah, okay, it's done right. Like the same way it's like he doesn't love superhero movies, but the Batman was obviously one of his favorite movies of the year, and it's like because it was done right.
Right. Yeah.
So that was why I wanted to bring him up, because he doesn't just like blindly consume the shit like me and you will. We're like, yeah, I seen Loki, yeah, I seen WandaVision.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
it has to be good for him to even be interested in it. So I think Pearl is like one of those movies where it's like, yeah, you could just be like, this is unnecessary, but I do think it's worth existing. And I feel like he would say that too, you know, like I know he wasn't as fond of it as the both of us, but I still think that he probably has a lot of good things to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's still what we like to champion on this podcast, which is create or just new ideas.
We like weirdo shit, bro.
But X really was, I felt more of us liking the weirdo stuff. Cause just like the slasher, gory, you know, this like the meme that's like this movie and have no titties, no blood.
Yeah, for real. But boo, Pearl's boring. She fucked a scarecrow. Boo.
So I did feel like X is for, you know, those horror fans, but I do think Pearl might have a lot of discourse in its future, and I do think it might have. Even I know you really weren't trying to be offensive, but I do think it might have even college, you know, just kind of lessons in terms of TV, or is this like, I don't know, examples of someone in the spectrum?
You know, I was just thinking that too, that Pearl will be the film school one. X will not be.
Yeah.
X will be like like when they tell the kid, like, if you want to make X, then just get out of this class.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's like, but if you want to make something like Pearl, you're in the right place, because I'm going to teach you about the history of cinema. You ever heard of Godard?
Yeah, exactly.
This isn't a horror movie. This is more like John Ford. You know
If
what
you
I
want
mean?
if you want to make Reservoir Dogs, get out of here.
Yeah. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. I feel like we talked about Pearl without giving away all the fun about it.
Right.
I feel like it's about time to wrap this up. What do you think? I had fun talking about this movie.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we always try to save the discourse for the podcast, and it's very interesting that we the points that we had to say about this movie. It's a little, like, I would say the flow of this podcast was a little different because this movie is really just based on Mia Goth a lot, and for the most part we try not to spoil stuff for you guys. But I do think this movie is obviously getting a lot of attention. So I'm sure if you're watching this, you've seen it. And I'd be very interested to see how you guys felt about it for sure.
I wish somebody would make a clip of you saying, like, we try not to spoil things too much for you guys. And then every time I've said, oh, spoiler, this happened, spoiler, this happened. Like,
true.
it'd probably be like 5 minutes long. I can't help it, dude. I'm a fucking spoiler. I will ruin this shit for you if you haven't seen it. Why are you listening to this episode this far in if you've not seen this movie? And, you know, that's psycho behavior, but I'm not going to lie. I do it all the fucking time, dude. I listen to podcasts about movies I've never seen before, so I'm just like the Pearls of the world, you know?
I think most people do. Some people will listen to it and they, because we've obviously taken care of that audience too. We're like, if we got you interested in the movie, which I feel like this podcast is more suited for, if we got you interested in wanting to watch the movie or wanting to watch X, That's
yeah,
kind
I
of
would
our goal
assume
too.
most people who are listening to this have already seen it. Like, have already seen the movie. Like, by the time this episode comes out, that they're there because they wanted to see like what other people were saying, not because they're like, I'm gonna watch an hour-long podcast about a movie I'd never seen before.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, which if you do, that's cool too. I appreciate you too, but
I usually do that for
personally-
movies that are like really old
Yeah,
or
yeah,
like
that
legendary.
makes
But I'm like,
sense.
oh, okay, like I've always wanted to watch that. Let me hear what someone's gonna
Yeah,
say about it.
exactly. That's that makes sense to me, you know. But like a new movie, maybe,
Nah, man.
but maybe you know we're catering to that audience that you said that wants to be in the know that can't see it, and they're kind of like you too. Be like, you can talk about it all you want, but I need to go see it. It's not gonna ruin anything for me.
Yeah, definitely. Man, I had so much fun talking about. I don't even know if I had more fun watching this movie or talking about this
it,
movie
yeah.
right now. And it's been, like we said, like I think almost a week now since we've seen it, and I've thought about it every day in like preparation for this. Of like, damn, I like that more than I thought.
Yeah. If we could put, I would have the face right now of the scarecrow smirking.
He had the best time.
Yeah. I was jealous of him.
So, what do you think? So, I thought X was a 5, and I think this is a 4. I mean, I know these are dumb ratings. These don't mean anything. It's just all personal.
It's
but
a personal tasting, but I gave X 4.5, and I gave this a 4, and I think I just gave. Or I can't really. I would have to watch X again. I've been trying to save it, you know, for a while again because I do want to watch these again back to back, but. I just really enjoyed how different they are, but X just really is like how
It's
you
the
said
sweet
is
spot.
my shit. You know,
Yeah.
it's more of my shit. This it's gonna last time more though. Like you said, this is gonna be in the classes, and so
yeah, this will be the one that survives.
yeah. So it's interesting. So I mean, obviously, we're really excited for Maxine. We're gonna end
boy, I
up
can't
doing
wait.
the trilogy. Ty West is gonna get actually a trilogy from us
In
the
real time.
podcast. Yeah. So. That'll be really interesting. So yeah, I can't wait. And I know we got the casting call. So
Oh, I have an audition to film after this. You got to go, dude.
yeah, like so. Hopefully y'all see me on there. But
Catch me on the casting couch.
Yeah.
I was in Maxine, bro.
Yeah, exactly. I was in the 80s, dude. Shit was crazy.
I'm excited for Maxine, and let's end this really quick with your not predictions for Maxine, but like what you're hoping for.
I think Maxine, it might be the perfect little blend of both. I think you had made a good point before in terms of the era. It's gonna be flashy. It might be Miami type shit, you know. Just
Well, it's gonna be in L.A.
oh, there you
But
go.
80s LA, I'm thinking like
Coke.
Ferraris, Coke,
You
you know,
know.
nightclubs, some crazy synth music. Like I just feel like it's gonna be that like shot of adrenaline, like this more in the tone of X than Pearl.
And I think it's gonna be that same obsession with being a porn star, and
Tight.
yeah, and it's gonna just be Maxine is obviously, as we saw in X, has gone. She's done the shit that she's got to do. So I think now she's boss lady and she's bossed up, and we're gonna get a very confident porn star that doesn't feel like anybody should be telling her what she can or can't do.
Oh man, Maxine the porn star. In the words of Adam Levine, I might need to see that booty. All right, bye guys.
Bye.